Okay. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're here for lecture week 4 of OPA. Today we're going to start with a little review about the steps from our OT framework or of task analysis or activity analysis, occupational activity analysis. All the steps are the same for both. The difference being that occupation-based activity analysis just looks at more of the meaning, the culture, the values, the roles, all those things that are really relevant to the client that we're working with, where activity analysis just focuses on just the activity itself. But if you've been using your book at all as a reference, you'll notice that you'll notice that they always have this nice outline of all the steps. And so when you go to create your own activities where you're teaching the class an activity and you're breaking down all the steps, the book has some really nice resources for guiding you through all the processes. Same information that we've been going over together in class, but it's just laid out again in the book. So the first step that we talked about was the occupation and just looking at what is it that we're actually analyzing it and paring it down into like a workable component that we can address with the client. So that our first step is just that, what is the occupation? The second step being establishing that relevance and the meaningfulness behind the occupation to see, is our client really on board? Is this really what's important to them? Considering all the contextual information that goes along with that, and understanding really how they perform or how they used to perform those occupations and the value that they place on those. And when we go through those steps, then it really helps us understand how vested our client is in the therapy process. It helps us understand maybe the setting that they're going to be performing them in. It helps us understand just a lot of things about, as we're setting goals and we're working with them, what this is going to look like and what we want our output to look like at the end of our therapy sessions. So our third step in this activity analysis is called sequencing and timing. And it really looks at how, when we're breaking down that activity into those smaller components, is there a particular sequence that the activity has to perform in? I have a good friend who has zero knowledge about cooking. She's never claimed to be a cook. Her mom was not a good cook, and she just doesn't really understand the sequencing of cooking. And so she's always asking for help, which everyone's happy to help her, but it's like she doesn't really retain it either. So when I think about this lesson, I think about my friend and her cooking skills, and just knowing that for some people, whether they're like my friend, or maybe they've had a head injury, or maybe they, maybe some other neurological complication or medication really doesn't allow them to foresee the steps in a logical sequence. So sometimes, according to our book, we really need to break down the activities in a sequential manner and really lay out exactly the parameters that they need to recognize before they can move on to the next step. So just kind of mentally going through those things with the client is helpful. But before I would do that, I would kind of also want to get their input, because maybe there's some ritual or regimented routine that our client has every time they brush their teeth. Maybe first they always floss their teeth first, or some people never floss, but just to kind of get a picture of well, what does it look like when you go to brush your teeth? What do you usually do? Do you use, this kind of toothpaste or whatever it is, just kind of getting their input, including them in the process of understanding what those steps in the activity are going to look like. And then also, like you guys had the experience of doing in the last 2 labs, going through the activity yourself and really kind of figuring out how does it feel to brush my teeth when I have to use my non-dominant hand. I don't have another hand to really help me because I had a stroke and it doesn't really do much for me. How do I open this tube of toothpaste? Um, one of you, I can't remember now who, but one of you talked about like squirting the toothpaste into your mouth first. Some of you used your teeth to pull your clothes on or to open this toothpaste cap or different, just you had to figure out like how to problem solve those things. So going through the activity yourself is a great way to like break down those steps for your client and problem solve how they're going to go about engaging in this activity with their challenges that they have. You guys were so like empathetic and frustrated by doing the activities the last 2 weeks. But I think it was a really good exercise for you to go through and do all those things because now you'll have so much better insight to your clients when I know many or all of you will end up working with someone who has had a stroke. So that's why I always would choose having a stroke as an example of how to work through those things. But just to see the level of frustration it causes, how much time it takes, just trying to problem solve, and already you're just feeling really low because you've had a stroke and you used to be so independent. So just the emotional weight that you're carrying, but then the physical frustration of trying to perform the activity, your head just isn't probably thinking super clear. And maybe you even like have some head trauma from your stroke or a head injury or something that is also further challenging you to think clearly. So going through those activities yourself can really help you break down the steps, be really empathetic, problem solve, just really understand how to best help the client that you're working with. You can also, like there's gonna be some activities that we're gonna talk about where maybe it would be helpful. I mean, they're not gonna wanna get dressed with another person in the room, but like, it might be helpful to do like shaving with another gentleman who's also had a stroke, like to recognize and to develop that sense of like, I'm not the only one who's struggling with this. Like someone else has had the stroke, and he's figured out like when he goes to do shaving or whatever, like old men might often use like shaving cream and a razor versus electric razor. That's why I bring up shaving. But like just to talk about it with another client, or maybe even have like a group session where they do grooming together, where they can kind of like support each other and talk about like, well, I found that this was really helpful when I did it this way. And just, so maybe you're breaking down the tasks, but you're also helping them help each other by having those conversations or doing the tasks together in a group. So that is our step 3, that sequence and timing. We're going to use something called the procedural task analysis. It is just, it's just a number of like kind of bullet points, and I should direct you. I did write this all out in our module 4. Maybe I will share my screen and share that with you. You wouldn't believe how many choices of things I have on my choices of screens to share. It's ridiculous. It's probably because I have so many things open. We're just gonna go with this one. Oh, no. Sorry. Okay, so in week 4, I think you can, yeah, you can see my screen. So I kind of typed these all out for you. So you'd have them as a reference for when you are going through these steps yourselves. So determine the sequence of the activity, determine the actions needed, and use the framework to determine sequencing. So we're going to talk about all of those. So the first thing in the procedural task analysis is to break down that occupation that you're going to choose as your most important area of occupation that you want to address with your client first. You're going to break it down into a smaller chunk, kind of like, did we do this? I'm forgetting which ones we did. So if you're going to do cooking, maybe you would want to break it down into just even gathering up the supplies and making sure they have all the tasks or all the supplies they need to make whatever it is they're making. So you're gonna, as you break these down, you're actually gonna write out the steps of what they're gonna do, and you're gonna just kind of problem solve. Like, okay, if you need to gather all your materials up and you're in a wheelchair, but you're gonna be doing some cooking, we have to make sure that you can access the items that you need. Like, can you reach things? Like, are we gonna need a reacher? Are we gonna need, are we gonna have to modify things? Like, so as you write out all of the steps of the activity, it's going to help you better problem solve before you actually get your client into the kitchen to do the activity. And then that would help you avoid frustration because you would already have pre-thought out what you need or what the setup will need to look like. So it recommends to start with an action verb, which I know you guys all know what that would look like, an action verb. And what is being acted on. We're going to go through some examples of these. You're going to decide how important each step is, the how part of each step is what's most important. So like if you need to do something carefully or quickly or slowly or different things like that, that's kind of that how. The timing elements, like if you need to do first and then this, these are all things that we're going to talk about. We're going to go through all these steps, but I'm just reading through the list first. This correct sequence, keeping things simple and concise, and then specific materials. So remember the people that you're working with probably all suffered some sort of traumatic brain injury, not always, but often with a stroke or a head injury or different things, cancer or medications, different things. So keeping like all of the steps and the logic very clear is going to be very important. Using or stating precautions or safety considerations. These people used to be able to do everything on their own, and they're used to being able to move about freely. And if they had a hip replacement, or maybe they can't bear weight on an extremity or different things, in their mind, they think they can still do everything. So they're quick to like jump up or to bend over and reach something that fell on the ground or things like that. And to remind them of those safety precautions along the way. It's just everything is going to be new for them, and they're not going to be super clear thinking. So it might seem like this is a lot of things to list out, but when someone is in that that rehab stage or even acute care stage and trying to get back to being independent, more information is often better because a lot of things are just so different for them. And then considering social norms or social cultural norms, how they do things, what's their routine, what are their, how do they perceive the activity should be done, and include them in your activity analysis to get their input for those kinds of things. So we're going to look at some examples of that. Oh, I threw in a couple extra things. So to further challenge things, in addition to like breaking down tasks and problem solving, how they're going to go about engaging in the class engaging in the activities under their new conditions. Sometimes our clients are also going to have what's called a co-occupation. Maybe they have a pet, or they have grandchildren, or they have children at home, or a spouse, or somebody else that they're living with that that adds to the activity. So they're not only just focusing on what they're supposed to be doing, but they're also engaging with someone else or an animal or something else at the same time. So that can complicate things, but it can also motivate them to be more independent or to show that they can do these things on their own. But sometimes it also is distracting, and so you kind of have to like talk them through that as well. Like, what is this going to look like when you're at home and you're doing cooking, or you're in the bathroom? Like, are you going to be compromised because of a big dog, or because of you know, another person or whatever. So you just kind of want to look at all of those factors when you're making plans to help them get back home. So, okay. So I kind of mentioned like the how, like I think I jumped ahead just a little bit. So each step should include, like I said, an action verb, how the action takes place, all of the objects, all the materials needed, any time considerations, and then the qualities of like the adverbs, like how to do things like slowly or carefully or cautiously, things like that, the manner in which they should be done. So carefully put the plate on the cupboard. So you'd think that that seems like a little extreme to like include that in, but again, they're maybe just not super clear thinking, or maybe they don't have adequate sensory feedback to know how much force to use or how little force to use, things like that. You have to consider kind of what your skills or what your client's skills are to kind of know, do I really need to put in carefully or slowly or softly or things like that, like just considering what they're capable of. So like this, the elements of time, again, my friend, she doesn't really understand time with cooking, and she would stir a batter for probably 20 minutes because she would never know if it was done enough, or she would cook things like twice as long just to make sure that they were really cooked. So being really clear on things like length of time required for cooking or baking. There was an example in the book about hair care that said, repeat the steps 3 through 7 until the hair is smooth and free of tangles. So it's like telling you you're going to keep doing these steps until it looks like this. So kind of like things where you can use time and some judgment together for them to know how long to participate in the activity. Being specific about materials, whether it's a measurement or a number of eggs or different things, like just when you're doing your activity analysis to make sure you're as specific as possible. Anytime there's an if-then situation, if the cake looks brown, then take it out of the oven and check for doneness, or, you know, different things like that. You could provide pictures if it's something that they're like, you just have to really understand where your client is functioning and know how much level of assistance they're going to need. If they need pictures, if they need like a timer, if they need just how much they're going to need. So as you get to know your client, you're going to know exactly how much information to put in these. So we're going to take a quick look at an example they had in the book. I copied it and made and included it in our module resources for today. And then I'm going to break you off into groups to do the same sort of thing, just with hand washing for a few minutes. And then we're going to come back and do our next activity. So here it is. Okay. So the eggs. Okay, let me make this a little bit bigger. If I can, why won't it? Okay. It doesn't really want to let me make it bigger. I'm gonna try opening it again. There we go. Okay. So again, they said, this is right from our textbook. This is their task analysis. You can see how long it is. Part of it, or it's 28 steps to make some scrambled eggs. So that tells you that this client probably needs a lot of things, a lot of details for making scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs seem pretty simple to me, and I was kind of surprised when it said 28 steps. So they really broke everything down very, very clearly. And they always started with a verb, just like they said. Pick up the pan by grasping the handle of the pan with one hand and picking it up. I mean, to you and me, it seems like such common sense, but given somebody with like a head injury or some disorientation or confusion, you just never know that they could pick it up some other way, or maybe the pan would be hot and they would pick it up on, the wrong part of it. So it's going to seem like common sense, but sometimes our clients might need something as common sense statement as this statement right here. Pick it up by the handle. Grasp the can of non-stick spray with the other hand. So they're holding the pan in one hand and the spray in the other. Can you picture yourself like going through the motions of this and then writing things down, where maybe if you didn't go through the motions of it, you would forget some steps. So so as you go through, you can totally picture what they're doing. Hold the nozzle of the can at least 6 inches above the pan. Press the nozzle down and spray the entire surface of the pan. So again, you have to picture, like, can your client use that isolated index control to hold onto the can and to spray with their index finger? Like, is that a skill that they could do? Maybe not. So then if they can't, how can you adapt it? You can definitely adapt it by using something that doesn't come out of a spray can. So this will help you break down all of those steps and think about their skills and how is this going to work, or do I need to come up with an adaptation? Place the pan on the burner, turn the burner on. So then again, can they turn the burner on? You think of older people, sometimes their hand skills, they might have really bad arthritis, or they might, like, things just can get really complicated sometimes for older people. And so looking at their setup in the stove, like if they're in a wheelchair, especially, is there controls for their stove? Are they in the back of the stove, or are they in the front of the stove? Like, are they going to be able to even turn on the stove when they go home? Looking at that, like, how are we going to know if they're going to be successful with this or not? We're going to have to visit their house. So this one, they're obviously using a gas stove because they're turning the knob until it starts clicking. So you'd want to know if your client has a gas stove or an electric stove, because otherwise this isn't going to make sense. And some older people can just be really super confused. So you just want to know what you know. Grasp one hand with an egg. Oh, now we have it twice. Grasp one hand with the egg. So some people would use one hand and some people would use two. You could use one hand with the egg if maybe your other hand doesn't work. So they're using a one-handed method to crack the egg, but it doesn't really coincide with the other instructions, because they had the client holding the pan with one hand and the spray nozzle with the other. So I don't think the client has like a limited ability to use two hands, but these are all things that you could think about with your client. Tapping the egg until it's cracked, just all these steps. So they've broken it down so much. And even telling them to put the eggshell in the trash can, and then repeat steps 9 through 13 for a second egg. So they have to go back up to step 9 and repeat that for the second egg. Holding the edge of the bowl with the left hand and picking up the fork with the flat edge. So they're really picturing all of these steps. You can see how this would really lend itself to being able to adapt the task as needed for your client's specific needs, their abilities, their setup, their environmental constraints, all of those things. Yes. So I'm going to have you guys just spend maybe like 5 minutes or so in groups, those of you that are able to participate, and just talk about going through an example of washing hands, because this is something that you guys are going to be doing together in small groups when you're teaching us in a couple weeks with our task analysis. I think it's called like the teaching, I forget specifically what it's called. Teaching and learning task analysis activities. So we're going to be starting those in a few weeks. And you guys will be doing something just like this. You'll be breaking down the activity, whatever it is you're going to teach us. You're going to break down the steps to teach us and talk about like adaptations and how you could make it work for a particular client. So I'm just going to give you, it says 1:35 now, so till 1:40, and I'll break you off into groups and just spend a few minutes talking about how you would write up hand washing, and I'll just give you a few minutes to do that. So if you wanted to look at that example, it's on your module if you needed to look at that. But otherwise, I'm going to send you into breakout rooms. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's about a dozen of you. Okay. All right. I will see you back in a few minutes.
The next step would probably be soap, but it depends on what kind of soap they have, if they're using a bar of soap or if it's like a pump.
You
So
can decide. You can just decide all of that. Yeah.
we're going to go old school and do a bar of soap. So grab the bar of soap with one hand.
Rub the bar of soap between both hands until like palms are covered in soap.
And then
Lathers or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And then place the bar of soap back in the dish.
I don't know what the verb would be for this. Rub hands, like lather hands for 2 minutes.
Place hands back under the water and rinse until all the soap is gone.
Grasp the faucet handles and turn it off. Turn off the water. Maybe left. Turn left.
Grab towel. I think that one would be that simple.
Using me with the hard verb. Rub hands with towel until completely dry.
Hang towel back up on rack.
I think that's it. We turned off our water, right? I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're awesome.
We're good.
Go. All right. I'm going to bring everyone back in a minute. Good job. You guys did a great job. Okay, I think I have everyone back. All right. Okay. So we have a little time left. Originally, I wasn't sure if we were going to have time in this class or 570, but Laura Schaefer had asked me to add the COPM to our class. And it seems like this class has more time available to add that into. So even though it says the COPM is going to be on 570's materials, it's not something that we're being tested on. It's just something that she wanted us to go over and be familiar with. It's just a tool for basically for interviewing clients. It goes along with the things that we've been talking about in 570, so I thought it would probably better pair with that material. But I feel like we have a lot to get through in 570 versus the OPA class is a lot lighter content. Both classes are just 1 credit. And I feel like they both have a lot of valuable information, but I feel like this one has less content that we would have more time to go over the COPM. So we're gonna go over the COPM today. I'm gonna share my screen, and there's a little learning section that you guys are gonna be able to participate in. You can do it today at the end of class, or you can do it on your own. It will be available for the next about month to participate in. We have about a month subscription left. They purchased it last year and it only runs through till like October 25th. So sometime between now and October 25th, I will have you participate in this short training session and watch a video. And it will just help you with your clinical skills as you're considering like ways to do an interview with a client. It's just one more tool for you to kind of observe the process, and something that's being currently used, so it's relevant. So I'm going to share my screen and show you how to go about getting into the training session, because there's a couple steps that can be a little bit confusing. So I will go ahead and share my screen again. All right, so it's in our week 4 materials. And let's see, no, Griffin. I forget which one I put it under. Okay, so this one has videos that are links that you can watch. The second of the 2, this one with the document is the one where I put the information in for you to access the learning things. So in here, it has the website that you're gonna go to, and we're gonna go ahead and go there. And I will take you step by step through it. I think I can do it. I already registered myself, so it could be that it doesn't let me do it again, but you'll still see the whole process. You're gonna need to copy this coupon code here. So I'm just gonna copy it because otherwise it would wanna charge you $30. So you can just copy it, and then when you get to the screen, you can just paste it in there. So I'm gonna click on the link, and it will take me to their site. So this is the COPM's official site. And I'm gonna say that I wanna buy an individual subscription. So I'm gonna click on there, but because I have a code, oh, see, now it won't let me do it again. That's okay. This is really what I just wanted to show you. So you're gonna go into this individual thing, and you're gonna click on subscribe just like I did. And it's gonna ask for your name and your email address and your address. And you can just put in UWL. You don't have to give them your real address. I just told them UWL and that was fine. And I gave them my UWL email address. And then where it says payment information, I did not have to enter a credit card information. I just copied that code into where it says coupon. And once I put the code in, then I owed $0 and I didn't have to put in a credit card. So it's very easy. And then let me see. So then I can go up to this learn thing because I've already done it. I can go right to my learning platform. Excuse me. So then there are, I think, 5 short things in here. So it's a short video for each one that talks about defining the problem. It's all the same things that we've been going through, where first you talk about the occupation or defining like, what is it? Why is your client here? What do they want to improve on? Why are they in for therapy? So you're defining the problem. Then you're deciding how important it is. You talk about their routines. So the COPM addresses all the same things that we've been talking about. It talks about selecting problems. So picking out like, what are the top 5 concerns of your client? What are the top 5 areas that they are really most concerned about? And that's what we're gonna try to address in therapy. And then it gives the relevance and the attributes of value to those areas. So the client then, they rate themselves on how able they think they can perform them and how much satisfaction that activity gives them. So both their ability to perform and their satisfaction with the activity. So it gives them a rating scale. And then this last step is something that you would probably do after you had done therapy for a while, because it goes back and asks them to kind of re-rate their satisfaction and their performance after some therapy has occurred. So it's just going to be a very short video about each of those. At the end, they do have some nice write-ups. These are evaluation write-ups that kind of show the information. It's not a video, it's just the information they got from the interview, and it talks about everything that they learned by doing the COPM. This one's with an 8-year-old boy. So I'm sure there was some parent interview components as well because of the information that they included. I don't think the 8-year-old would have been capable of sharing all of this, but it was very insightful, and they were able to get all this information from the interview. So I thought it was a nice example of what you might get out of using the COPM. I'm gonna go back to our week 4, and then in this other one that's not a document, I've just attached 2 links of people being interviewed. So if you're interested, you can kind of watch the interview being given. One is a middle-aged man with a lower extremity injury. He kind of looked kind of tough, and I didn't really think he would want to talk very much. When I first started watching it, I'm like, I just don't know if he's going to be like the best person to watch, because he might be kind of grumpy, look kind of grumpy, but he ended up doing a really good interview. I thought it was really insightful having somebody that wasn't just an elderly person, but somebody who was going back to work and just considering what his needs are and his perception of how he can do things with his pain and his injury. And the other one is just a sweet little old lady who's talking about wanting to go back home. So you can watch those. Again, this is just for your benefit of having some more exposure of seeing evaluation performed. And this one's really just an interview laid out, but it really co-aligns with all the information that we've gotten from the OT framework and that occupational performance analysis that we looked at last week. So just a good complement to that. So do you guys have any questions, anything going on that we need to talk about? Anybody?
For that COPM, do you want us to like submit like proof that we completed it or
No.
anything like that? No? Okay.
Nope, it's just your benefit. It's just something that is out there, and it's just always nice to have one more tool in your toolbox or a little more exposure to things. So there's no assignment, it's just for your benefit. So I don't need any proof. Okay, anybody else?
I had a question about the lab from yesterday, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I noticed, well, we noticed today that I looked yesterday and there wasn't a Dropbox, but now I looked today and it looks like the assignment was dated due as of yesterday. But I didn't submit anything.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. That was totally, I didn't realize that it was asking you guys to submit that. Somebody else brought that up as well. It was just my negligence or unfamiliarity with Canvas and how it works that I didn't know it would prompt you to turn something in. So I really just want you guys to bring that information with you next Monday when we meet in lab. And we'll be meeting face to face in our regular groups. So one of you will come at 70, or half of you will come at 7:45 and the other half at 9:55. And we will use that information to start talking about our SOAP notes, which is a documentation style that's used by a lot of places. It's supposed to be a short, concise documentation, but I know students always kind of freak out that they're not sure that they're doing it right. And so I thought it'd be good if we could start it a little sooner. It's kind of worked into our syllabus later in the semester, but I thought it wouldn't hurt to start it earlier, and it goes really well with our activity. So we'll just use the information you got from doing your cooking activity or your sandwich or whatever, and we'll just apply that to our SOAP note on Monday when we work through that together. So on the back side of the page that had the UWL header had that SOAP note format on the back. And so don't complete that until next week, and we'll go through that part together. Sorry for any confusion. And then yesterday, there was a bunch of technical things going on top of it where I wasn't getting I wasn't sending or receiving emails. And then all of a sudden at like 10:45, it like cleared, and then I got all of your emails. So it's just, and then, yeah, there's just a lot of Microsoft stuff going on yesterday with the school district and Canvas and so many things. It was not a good technical day. So I apologize. All right, you guys, I think we are done for today if there's nothing else. And I will see you guys in lab on Friday or lecture on Thursday. All right. You guys have a good Tuesday.